can I play for food? They laugh at the homeless girl, not knowing she's a piano prodigy, her age 12-year-old. The camera opens on a crowded city street at dusk. Neon signs flicker. Cars honk. People rush past without looking. And then, a trembling voice cuts through the noise. Can I play for food? A 12-year-old girl, her hair messy, her coat too thin for the cold, stands beside a broken piano dragged from a dumpster. The keys are yellowed, some chipped, others missing. The crowd laughs. Phones rise. Someone mutters, "She's just a homeless kid. What could she know about music?" Her face burns red, not from the cold, but from shame. She places her small hands on the keys anyway. For a split second, silence hangs heavy in the air, mockery waiting to erupt. But what follows will silence every voice. Because sometimes the world's greatest prodigies don't play in grand concert halls. Sometimes they play in the shadows of hunger, begging not for fame but for survival. And so I ask you, when a child has to trade talent for bread, what does that say about us? Backhand index pointing right, this isn't just her story. It's ours. Don't scroll. Don't look away. Because if this unsettles you, the conversation cannot end here. Her name is Elena, 12 years old. Brown eyes too big for her face, always scanning the world as if looking for something. Something safe, something warm. Before she was the homeless girl with a piano, Elena was just a kid. A kid who woke up to the smell of her mother's pancakes sizzling on a battered pan. A kid who would hum to herself as she brushed her teeth with a toothbrush missing half its bristles. A kid who skipped down cracked sidewalks on her way to school, clutching a tattered notebook filled with doodles of music notes. Music was always there, in the quiet drip of the leaky faucet, in the rattle of the bus engine that carried her across town, in the way her mother hummed lullabies when she thought Elena was asleep. Elena didn't own a piano, not really. The only one she knew lived in the back of her school's dusty music room. Every afternoon, when most kids ran outside to play, Elena would slip through the door and place her fingers on those ivory keys. She didn't have a teacher. She didn't have sheet music. What she had was instinct. She could listen to a song once on the radio and then, like magic, make it spill out of her hands. The janitor noticed first, then a teacher. Eventually, even the principal would pause, leaning on the doorframe, listening to the skinny little girl weave symphonies with no training, no guidance, just raw, aching genius. But brilliance doesn't pay rent. Elena's mother worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night, serving food during the day. Even so, the money was never enough. Rent crept higher, groceries grew thinner, and soon the landlord's patience grew shorter. Elena began noticing little things. How her mom's shoes had holes at the bottom. How dinner portions got smaller. How some nights the light stayed off, to save electricity. Still, Elena clung to music. It was her refuge. When her classmates teased her about wearing the same faded sweater, she went home and poured her tears into the piano. When she overheard her mother crying quietly in the bathroom, Elena composed lullabies in her head, promising herself that one day her songs would fix everything. But the city wasn't built for kids like Elena. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday, red letters across white paper, like a wound against their door. Within weeks, Elena and her mother were sleeping on a friend's couch, then in a shelter, then sometimes in the cold backseat of a car. And yet, Elena still carried her music. She would tap rhythms on her knees to keep warm. She would hum softly in the shelter at night to lull the younger kids to sleep. Hope became a fragile, flickering candle inside her, and still she believed. One afternoon, while wandering the alleys near the shelter, she found it, a discarded, broken piano. It was splintered, strings rusted, half the keys jammed. But to Elena, it was treasure. She dragged it, scraped knuckles, sore arms, into a corner of the street where people passed by. She whispered to her mother, "If I play, maybe someone will help. Maybe we won't be hungry tonight." Her mother hesitated. She hated the thought of her daughter begging. But when your child's ribs show, pride becomes a luxury. So there she stood, 12 years old, hair tangled, clothes too small, a broken piano before her, hunger in her belly, and hope in her heart. And when she opened her mouth to ask, her voice shook. Can I play for food? The world around her didn't see a prodigy. They saw a homeless girl, a nuisance, a joke. But Elena was about to teach them all a lesson they would never forget. At first, there was only laughter. When Elena whispered, Can I play for food? A few strangers chuckled, shaking their heads. One man pulled out his phone, recording. Look at this, he sneered. A little Mozart from the dumpster. Another woman muttered, Her parents should be ashamed, letting a child beg like that. Elena felt her stomach twist. Her hands hovered over the keys. Trembling, for a moment, she thought about running. Back to the shelter, back to the shadows. But then her mother's voice echoed in her memory. When the world doesn't see you, play louder. Make them listen. So she pressed down. The first chord was clumsy, rusty keys groaning, one sticking halfway. The laughter swelled. Someone tossed a crumpled paper bag at her feet. Not money, but trash. Her cheeks flushed hot with shame. Still, Elena played. And then something strange happened. Amid the broken notes, beauty surfaced. Her small fingers, dirty but precise, coaxed a melody out of the ruined instrument. It wasn't perfect. It was raw, fractured, but powerful, like a bird singing through broken wings. The laughter quieted, but not out of respect, out of confusion. People leaned in, phones still up, recording, not because they believed, but because they expected her to fail spectacularly. Minutes passed. Her mother, standing nearby, clutched her worn jacket tighter, praying someone, anyone, would hear the brilliance inside her daughter. But when the song ended, silence hung in the air. Then, instead of applause, came a sharp voice. Nice trick, kid. Now stop wasting our time. Coins clinked to the ground, not as kindness, but as insult, mockery disguised as charity. A group of teenagers passing by clapped exaggeratedly, one shouting, Encore Beethoven, as they doubled over laughing. Elena's chest tightened. She wanted to disappear. Yet hunger gnawed deeper than humiliation. So she played again. Day after day, she returned to that corner. Day after day, the cycle repeated. Curiosity, laughter, mockery, dismissal. Some tossed her pennies. Others shoved past as if she were invisible. A few spat cruel words. Get a real job. Where's your daddy now? The city grew colder. The shelter food lines longer. Elena's mother's face thinner. Each insult carved deeper into Elena's heart. She began to doubt herself. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was just a joke. But still, when her fingers touched the keys, magic spilled out. Strangers couldn't deny it. They just refused to believe it. Until one afternoon, the cruelty crossed a line. A man in a suit stopped. He looked down at her with cold amusement. A piano prodigy, huh? Let's see you prove it. He tossed a half-eaten sandwich onto the piano, mayo dripping down the side. The crowd laughed. Elena froze, tears stinging her eyes. Her mother stepped forward, but the man's glare stopped her. You're teaching your kid to beg. Pathetic. Elena's hand shook. This was the moment, the point of no return. She could walk away, let their voices crush her completely. Or she could fight, not with fists, not with words, but with music. So she took a deep breath, and she played. Not timidly, not begging, but fiercely. The melody roared out of her, bigger than her body, bigger than that street corner. Her small hands flew across broken keys, pulling lightning out of rusted strings. The sound was jagged yet breathtaking, a symphony clawing its way out of ruin. The crowd fell silent. Phones stopped recording. Even the man in the suit lowered his smirk, uneasy now, as if realizing he had awakened something far greater than he could mock. But silence is fragile. It shattered quickly. Fake, someone muttered. There's no way she's really playing that. Another chimed in. Probably just a recording. A scam. The man in the suit sneered again. Pathetic trick. Everyone here knows you're not real. You're just a homeless brat with dirty fingers. The words hit harder than any stone. Elena's chest heaved. She felt the ground beneath her shift. No matter how beautifully she played, the world refused to see her. Not as a musician. Not even as a child. Just invisible. And that realization cracked something inside her. She kept playing, but now tears fell onto the keys, blurring her vision. Every note became a plea. See me, hear me. Don't erase me. Her mother reached for her, whispering, Enough, baby, enough. But Elena shook her head. She couldn't stop now. Not when the music was the only voice she had left. As the last broken chord echoed down the street, Elena looked up at the crowd. Some averted their eyes, ashamed. Others shrugged, already scrolling on their phones. The man in the suit smirked, victorious. In that moment, Elena understood this wasn't about the music. It was about who she was. A girl too poor, too small, too invisible to matter. And yet, she also knew something else. The music still lived inside her, no matter how they tried to bury it. But the storm was only beginning. The breaking point was near. It happened on a Saturday. The street was busier than ever. Shoppers with bags, tourists snapping photos, children tugging parents' hands. Elena set her small hands on the broken piano once more, stomach hollow, throat dry. She hadn't eaten since the night before. Today mattered. If she played well enough, maybe someone would give her more than a penny. Maybe dinner wouldn't just be bread and water. She pressed the first chord. It rang out, raw and imperfect, but alive. The crowd thickened. Phones lifted. A murmur passed among them. That's the girl, the homeless one who plays. At first, the music flowed. Her fingers moved with instinct, weaving beauty out of ruin. She felt the rhythm lifting her, as though for a brief moment, hunger and humiliation didn't exist. It was just her and the music. And then, a sudden crash. A plastic soda cup hurled across the crowd, striking the keys with a wet smack. Cola sprayed across her hands, seeping between the yellowed ivories. The crowd erupted with laughter. Oops, guess she hit the wrong note, someone jeered. Elena froze. The laughter roared louder, echoing like thunder in her skull. She could hear her heartbeat pounding, fast, frantic, like a trapped bird in her chest. Her vision blurred. Her mother rushed forward, but two men blocked her path, chuckling, Let the Prodigy finish her concert. Elena's hands shook as she wiped the sticky cola from her fingers. She wanted to run, hide, vanish into the shadows. But another voice inside her, quiet but fierce, whispered, Play. Don't let them kill your song. So she struck the keys again. This time, she poured everything into it. Anger, hunger, fear. The melody screamed. Notes collided, sharp and desperate. A storm exploding out of that broken piano. The crowd hushed, not in respect, but in shock. It was too raw, too human, too powerful to dismiss. And yet, cruelty is relentless. A man shouted over the music, Stop pretending. You think you're some kind of genius? You're nothing but a beggar. Others joined in. Fraud. Scammer. Get a job. Their voices crashed over her, louder than the music, louder than her own heartbeat. Her chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. The keys blurred before her eyes. Every note now tasted like salt. Tears running down her cheeks, dripping onto the piano. The laughter twisted into jeers. The jeers into chants. Fraud. Beggar. Nothing. Elena's body shook. Her small shoulders quivered under the weight of their contempt. She slammed the keys, one final chord echoing through the street like a scream. Then silence. Complete silence. Her hands hovered, trembling above the keys. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Around her, the crowd loomed. Faces blurred, distorted, monstrous. Some recorded. Some laughed. Some simply turned away. And in that silence, Elena broke. Not just the tears, but something deeper. The fragile belief that talent, that beauty, that music could save her. It shattered. She felt herself collapse inward, as though her very soul had splintered like the broken piano she clung to. Her mother pushed through at last, wrapping her arms around her. Enough, baby. Enough. But Elena didn't answer. She buried her face against her mother's coat, sobbing. Her thin frame shook as the crowd dispersed, their laughter fading into the indifferent noise of the city. The broken piano stood there, sticky with soda, stained with tears. A battlefield. a graveyard of hope. And as Elena's sobs quieted, only one thought echoed in her mind. No matter how loud I play, the world will never hear me. The next morning, the piano was gone. Maybe the city took it. Maybe vandals dragged it away. Maybe the rain finished what the crowd had started. But for Elena, its absence felt like the final proof that her music didn't belong anywhere. Not on the streets, not in her school, not in the world. She sat on the curb, knees to her chest, staring at the empty corner where her dream had lived and died. Her hands still smelled faintly of cola, sticky and sour. She rubbed them against her coat, as if trying to scrub the memory away. Her mother knelt beside her, brushing messy strands of hair from her face. "You're more than what they said," she whispered, but her voice cracked. Even she wasn't sure if the words were true anymore, because the truth was brutal. Elena was 12 years old, and the world had already told her she was nothing. At the shelter that night, she didn't touch the piano keys on the old donated keyboard in the corner. She couldn't. Every note echoed with jeers. Every sound felt like proof of her failure. Instead, she sat in silence, clutching her knees, her music locked inside. But here's the thing about music, about truth, about humanity. You can bury it, mock it, try to erase it, but it doesn't vanish. It waits. It lingers in the shadows of those who refuse to listen. Elena's story isn't just about one broken piano on one street corner. It's about a system that decides whose voice is worthy of being heard. A system that sees poverty before it sees talent, homelessness before humanity, hunger before hope. How many Elenas have been silenced before they ever had a chance to be heard? How many prodigies, poets, and dreamers have been crushed not because they lack brilliance, but because they lack shelter, food, safety, or money? The cruelty wasn't just the laughter. It was the indifference. The phones recording, not helping. The coins tossed, not in generosity, but in mockery. The silence of those who saw and chose to walk away. And that's where this story becomes ours. Because Elena is not alone. Right now, as you hear this, children sit in shelters, in alleyways, in cars, holding gifts the world may never see. Because hunger silences them before music can speak. Because ridicule breaks them before talent can bloom. Elena's piano may be gone, but the question remains. What kind of society laughs at a starving child instead of feeding her? What kind of world silences a prodigy because she doesn't fit the picture of privilege? The easy thing to do is to move on, to scroll past, to say, it's just one story. But it isn't. It's thousands, millions. And if it unsettled you, if some part of your chest tightened hearing about Elena's hands shaking over sticky keys, then the conversation cannot end here. Because silence is complicity. Because every coin tossed in mockery, every laugh that cuts a child's spirit is on us too. So what can we do? We can talk. We can share. We can refuse to look away. We can demand systems that don't let children starve in the first place. We can listen, not just when music is polished and pretty in a concert hall, but when it's raw and desperate in the streets. Elena may never play again. Or maybe one day she will. But her story should echo long after the last note faded on that broken piano. The camera lingers on an empty street corner. The faint sound of distant music plays, soft, haunting, unfinished. And then silence.